Hello, today we're at the Nez Perce County Fairgrounds. I'm Debbie Williams, WSU Extension Director for Walla Walla County, and Mark Heitzman, Asotin County Director for Extension, is here with us today, and we're going to talk about goat selection.
One of the things to remember is that there are a lot of people that can help as far as actually picking out your goat project and making sure it's a successful project from when you get it all the way through the fair. And that will include people like forage leaders, extension personnel, parents and grandparents and older brothers and sisters, your local FFA advisors, as well as the actual people that are breeding goats and where you get your goat from. And there's a lot of things to consider when picking out your goat. One of the things is that we want to make sure it's the right age and weight for the fair, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. And we want to make sure that the animal has had the right shots and the right vaccines prior to getting your goat project. And one of those important vaccines is a shot called overeater shot, or Clostridium perfringens is kind of the fancy name for it. But basically it's a shot that should be given a couple weeks prior to weaning before you get your goat, and it will help it as far as keep it from getting overeating disease. Some other things to consider is make sure that your goat ideally has been weaned from the mom and been started out on the feed a couple weeks. It's a lot easier to get an animal that's been weaned prior to taking it home and to know what it's been fed, and it's a good idea to actually purchase a little of the feed that the goat's been on so that you can transition your goat over from what it's been feeding to what you're going to actually feed it and that. And you also want to make sure that most goats, at least in the state of Washington, they need to be either born polled or they need to be what we call disbudding, which means taking off those horns. So that should be done prior also. And if you're showing a goat with horns, they need to have some protection over those tips of those horns for safety purposes. So you can use things like a tennis ball or a tape, or actually put tubing over the ends of the horns to help protect it in that. Okay, today we're going to talk about selecting market goat projects as far as forage and FFA members. And really selecting a market goat meat project is a combination of good genetics as far as starting with a good goat to begin with, making sure the goat is the right age and weight, and then a good feeding program, making sure that the animal is healthy, doing the proper exercise and training of your goat before the fair, and then finally doing a great job as far as showing the goat, as far as presenting the animal to the judge actually at the fair. So one of the things we need to make sure that the goat that we pick out is the right age and the right size for the show that we're going to, and also we need to determine what's the best frame or the best final weight for that goat. We could call that kind of the target weight. It's like each one of us has a best weight that we should be at. Our goat projects are going to have a weight range where they are going to look their best. And most of the goats that we show at our fairs in the Northwest at least, they're going to be somewhere between about 6 and 10 months of age. Right, Caleb? Do you know how old your goat is? No, okay. But about 6 to 10 months is a kind of an age that most of our goats are at. And we're going to have a bottom weight for our goats, and we're also going to have a top weight. And at most fairs, that bottom weight can be somewhere maybe 60 to 70 pounds, and the top weight may be between 110 and 120 pounds at the fair. So if our goat is weighing about 40 pounds at the end of May and our fair is the end of August, and we need that goat to weigh about 70 to 80 pounds come fair time, and that goat's going to need to put on some weight, and we need to have a really good feeding program. As I mentioned before, these goats can gain anywhere from 2 to 5/10 of a pound a day, but if they're really going to be gaining good, and if we're gaining 4 to 5/10 of a pound a day, then they're going to need a diet that really has a lot of grain in it. If we're just feeding our goat as far as some hay and grass, they're not going to gain the needed weight that we need. So having a good nutrition program and having a diet that has a lot of grain as far as oats and barley and corn, along with some roughage, is going to help us to hit that target weight. And one thing to remember about goats and most of our animals that we use for show animals, that they're very social. So it's a good idea to either buy 2 goats at the same time and feed them together, or else if there's another youth in your 4-H or FFA group, those two goats can be fed together, and they just seem to do better as far as staying on feed and growing better. So those are some points to consider, and next we're going to look at some things that we need to worry about when actually selecting a market meat goat. So let's talk about now some points to actually consider when selecting a market goat project. Okay? And about 4 points we're going to want to consider is structure correctness, how much meat and volume and capacity the goat has, and whether or not it has the growth potential, and finally how much style and balance it has. So let's talk about those 4 points, and why don't we start out talking about structural correctness. And when we're talking structural correctness in the goat, I like to analyze the goat from the ground, from the feet on up. And we want to make sure that the goat has a good set of feet and legs on it. We want these front legs to be right underneath the front shoulders of the goat. And we want the back legs to be nice out at the corners and kind of be nice and square. So we'll try to get it set up here, kind of show you that. So these rear legs now, they have some width in it and that structural correctness is really important. And also the head of the goat. And let's just turn your goat this direction just a little bit. Okay? See if it'll sit back down there. As far as that neck of the goat, we want that neck to come right out of the top of that shoulder. So structural correctness is really kind of the starting point. And if a goat isn't built good structurally as far as its feet and legs and that to begin with, then we want to make sure that we select a different goat if possible. The second point is muscle on a goat. I'm going to come right behind you here, and there's several indicators in muscle as far as a goat project. One of those is width through that chest floor, and we'll turn your goat in a second here and we can look at that chest floor. You want to look at this forearm. We want to have a lot of width through that forearm. And then we want to look over the top of the goat as far as over its shoulder area and through its loin and through its legs. So to continue talking about muscling, we want goats that are really wide through that loin area, and hopefully that loin is really three-dimensional, and that it's long from where the ribs end to where the hip bones begin, but we also want that loin to be deep. We can kind of wrap our hands in it and see how deep that loin is. We also want it to be wide from the top. And we also look at the goat from behind, and we're just going to turn your goat just a little bit here. We want that goat to be particularly wide through that lower third of its leg, and this muscle right down here is called the stifle muscle. And we want to have a lot of width and thickness through that stifle area. And then finally, we want a goat that has some style and balance, kind of some eye appeal. We want something that's going to get the judge's attention when it comes into the show ring. And that style and balance and eye appeal really comes back to a lot of structural correctness. We want that goat to have a real nice high head. When the goat walks out, that it keeps its head really walking wide. We want the shoulder blades to flow in nice and smooth. And we want the shoulder blades to blend into the loin, and finally that loin area to blend in with the leg. So style and balance is important. And we also probably should talk about a little bit about volume and capacity. And basically volume and capacity refers to the length of the goat compared to the depth of the goat compared to the width of the goat. And ideally we want a goat that is long but also has a lot of depth of body to it, and a goat that is also really wide through the top. So finally, we should probably talk about some faults as far as goats, some common faults that we see. And one of the things we want to make sure of is when we picking out a goat, we want goats that are nice and wide up over that top, and wide through that loin, and wide through that top of the leg, and wide from behind that. And we should really try to avoid goats that are really sharp or pointed through that shoulder area. Goats that when we look at them from the side, that aren't nice and level and straight. And also some goats have a tendency of just having a lot of slope from the hip bone to what we call the pin bone, and that. So that rump really slopes. So ideally we'll have a goat that is really long and level through that hip, and also has a lot of natural thickness to it.
I'd like to thank Caleb Wing for sharing his goat from the Wing Crossbred Goat Farm. Caleb's been a big help today in showing us how to select meat goats.
So in conclusion, market goat projects are really a fun project for forage and FA members, and as we discussed, it's really important that they select animals that are structured correct, by the right age, and the right, know what weight those goats need to be finished at as far as the target weight. We want to make sure that the goats are nice and healthy, and then everything we can do as far as them feeding them correctly and training them and working with them, all that goes into having a successful market meat goat project.
Thank you, Mark, for helping us with the selecting meat goats.